Imagine this: endless dunes of shimmering gold beneath a relentless sun, the scent of burning incense thick in the heavy air. Hooded figures bow in silent devotion before a sleek, alert feline whose eyes shine like cut obsidian. But this isn't just any cat. This is Bastet, the ancient Egyptian goddess of protection, delight, and nocturnal secrets. In the eyes of ancient civilizations, animals like her weren't merely beasts. They were sacred conduits, living emblems of forces far beyond mortal comprehension. From the soaring hawks revered by Native American nations to the winged dragons of East Asian mythology, cultures throughout history have entwined animals into their stories, ceremonies, and visions of the cosmos. But why? What deeper meanings fuel this universal awe of the animal world? The answer lies in a forgotten truth, one both vast and intimate. To the ancients, animals weren't just allies or instruments. They were reflections of the cosmos itself, manifestations of the storm and the harvest, of birth and decay, of chaos intertwined with order. Mythic beasts and their echoes through ancient civilizations, beyond soaring serpents that shaped the course of civilizations and ocean giants that bore entire belief systems on their spines. The further we peer into the past, the more undeniable it becomes. These beings weren't merely featured in ancient tales, they were the very voices of those tales. Stand at the threshold of an age-old Assyrian palace, and you're not merely facing chiseled rock, you're encountering the burden of countless gazes cast through centuries. Looming above, a lamassu, its colossal bovine frame anchored deep into the soil, wings stretched wide like gathering tempests, its monarch-like visage exuding a stoic dominance. These figures were far from ornamental. They served as hushed guardians of a mighty dominion, sculpted to occupy the liminal space where the mortal and the divine converged. One hoof rested in the domain of rulers, the other stepped into the sacred world of gods. The lamassus stood as a truth revered by the Mesopotamians. Protection stemmed not only from might, but from equilibrium. Peer more intently, and their meaning intensifies. 5 legs, an ancient masterwork in optical illusion. From a head-on view, it stands still, a bastion of permanence. Shift your angle, and it's in motion, striding eternally, tireless in its duty. This was no mere trick of the eye, it was a philosophy hewn into stone. Assyrian sovereigns didn't wish merely to depict defenders, they intended their people to sense the ceaseless momentum of imperial rule, omnipresent, ever-moving. And the wings, more than flourishes, they murmured of celestial endorsement. A quiet assertion that dominion wasn't only granted by a crown, but by the very skies. Yet the mythic beasts of Mesopotamia didn't end with the lamassu. Beneath the towering shadow of Babylon's ziggurats slinked the mushussu, a creature that defied all natural categories. A serpent's head, leonine forelimbs, raptor-like talons, and a tail capable of circling the cosmos. This was no mere companion of Marduk, it was Babylon's power incarnate, roaming on clawed feet. The mushussu embodied a symbolic map of Mesopotamian belief, chaos conquered and contained. The snake, a denizen of the deep abyss. The lion, king of the earth's surface. The eagle, ruler of the heavens. United in a single beast, they formed an unstoppable emblem of cosmic dominion. Then comes Humbaba, the fearsome sentinel of the cedar woods in the Epic of Gilgamesh. His face? A maze of entrails. His voice? A tempest. But Humbaba wasn't a mere monster. He was the personification of wilderness. Unruly, primal, resisting all taming. In slaying him, Gilgamesh did more than win a fight. He ignited a confrontation with nature itself, a warning etched in myth. Mankind's triumph over the wild is always shadowed by the cost of its own control. Echoes of beasts. The symbolic power of stags and wolves in Norse myth. Dane, Dvalin, Duner, and Durer, the 4 stags forever nibbling at the world tree's foliage, didn't devour like Fenrir's all-consuming hunger. Their gentle feeding upheld the cosmos. From their branching antlers dripped dew, which transformed into flowing rivers. Their exhalations stirred the changing winds, marking the passage of time. While wolves and ravens symbolized destruction and insight, the stags represented nature's ongoing rhythm, life enduring even as Ragnarok loomed. This tension between decay and renewal was etched deep into the Viking psyche. To charge into war beneath the raven's banner was to accept destiny, to acknowledge that Odin's feathered watchers might soon feed on your fallen body. Donning a wolf's pelt meant aligning with the beast fated to bring the god's end, not in rebellion, but with solemn acceptance. The Norse didn't resist the stories they told. They became them. Their verses wove Fenrir's bone-crushing fury and the deer's quiet grace into the same lines of poetry. And as their dragon-proud ships landed on far-off coasts, this ritual of contrasts found reflection in other traditions, among Celtic trees where deer ruled as sacred monarchs and wolves uttered omens, where crows carried the dead and serpents coiled around hallowed springs. The Vikings may have inscribed their truths in runes, but the land had been speaking long before, in paw prints pressed into soil, in wings slicing through air, in the hush before a storm, and the silent chewing of leaves. Beneath swirling mists and eternal skies, the old symbols and spirit beasts and the journey beyond the veil, a test of isolation and fasting, where the veil between flesh and spirit thinned. This was no mere ritual. A young initiate might crouch for days in a shallow hollow, waiting in silence as hunger stripped away distraction, sharpening perception. Then, through the shimmer of sweat-soaked vision, a wolf might emerge, not to chase, but to speak, delivering truths of loyalty, resilience, or silent strength. These weren't delusions. They were revelations, the creature's essence transformed into guidance, a name, a melody, a way forward. Nowhere is the blend of reverence and reverence clearer than in Cherokee traditions. The thunderbird, whose thunderous wings split the heavens, coexists with the humble mouse, a creature who, though small, once outwitted the blazing sun to steal fire for the people. The message? Power wears many masks. A feather may seem frail beside a claw, yet in the right wind, it carries greater force. These beliefs are not ancient dust. At modern powwows, eagle feathers still crown acts of bravery. Environmental activists invoke the buffalo's giving spirit in their fight to reclaim stolen land. Even in city streets, native youth wear animal totem pins, subtle, steadfast acts of remembrance, whispering, "We have not forgotten." In the deep rhythm of ceremonial drums, the old heartbeat still echoes, older than any border, deeper than language. It summons the spirits not as fables, but as teachers, not as icons, but as kin. The beat quickens now, drawing us into the lush green maze of the Amazon, where jaguars glide like midnight incarnate, and northward to the Siberian tundra, where the aurora flows like rivers of light. There, on frozen ground, a shaman's drumbeat merges with the rhythm of reindeer hooves. For the Nenets people, these are no mere creatures. They are vessels between worlds. Their antlers, branching like cosmic neural maps, guide journeys beyond the seen. When a shaman enters trance, it's often the reindeer who carries them, not ridden like a beast, but followed like a guide. Their white fur doesn't just blend into the snow. It reflects the stillness, the clarity needed to meet the spirits. And when a herd encircles a fevered child, steam rising from their nostrils in the cold, it's not instinct, it's ritual. The Nenets believe reindeer draw illness into themselves, transmuting it, dissolving human pain into the vast, silent white. Now, shift south again to the emerald canopy of the Amazon, where the jaguar stalks like flowing shadow. For the Shipibo shamans, this great cat isn't a predator, it's a sentinel between realms. Duad, not just in myth, but in the world itself. Sacred creatures and the civilizations they shaped. To some, it may seem curious that an entire society would revere an animal as commonplace as the cow. But in the world of ancient India, the cow was far more than a source of food or labor. It embodied selfless giving. Like a mother sustaining her child, the cow sustained the land and its people. Its milk nourished generations, Its dung fueled household fires, and its gentle presence served as a living symbol of life's sanctity. This wasn't blind faith or folklore. It was a deep understanding of the interconnected nature of existence, where even the flick of a cow's tail echoed with spiritual weight. Now look skyward to the eagle soaring above the open landscapes of North America. For indigenous nations like the Lakota, this bird was not merely part of nature, but a divine messenger. Its wings were not just made of bone and feather, but were seen as the very strokes of the Creator, writing sacred messages across the sky. When an eagle circled overhead, it was not merely scanning for prey, it was believed to be carrying prayers between the physical world and the spirit realm. Eagle feathers, worn by warriors, were not trophies or ornaments, they were shields, imbued with the bird's piercing sight and unyielding elevation, providing spiritual protection in battle. Across oceans and throughout history, animals have taken on roles far beyond their physical forms. They became messengers, symbols, and guides. A howling wolf might echo the voice of a mountain god. A serpent, coiled and watchful, could embody the mysteries of death and rebirth. Even creatures considered ordinary today, beetles, frogs, and insects, pulsed with sacred force in the eyes of those who revered them. Such reverence didn't just reflect a belief system. It influenced architecture, shaped rituals, and guided daily life. Through these living symbols, entire cultures were formed, civilizations built not just around people, but around the animals that helped them understand the universe itself. Eyes of insight. Animal symbols in ancient Greek thought. The olive trees murmured under the Aegean winds, and atop Athena's shoulder sat her eternal companion, the owl. With eyes like moonlit marble, it gazed into realms beyond illusion. To the ancient Greeks, this was no ordinary bird. It was the living embodiment of wisdom, a creature of paradox, thriving in darkness while revealing truths brighter than the sun. Why the owl? Because the Greeks didn't merely observe animals, they read the universe through them. The owl's ability to navigate the night reflected Athena's gift of seeing clearly in the midst of disorder. Its quiet flight spoke volumes about the power of restraint. Its unwavering stare captured the very soul of philosophy, perception without distortion. So revered was this bird that its image was stamped onto Athenian currency, a silent declaration that real riches came not from silver, but from knowledge. And then there was Python, the ancient serpent wound tightly around the heart of Delphi, its breath laced with prophecy. When Apollo's arrows struck and ended the beast, it wasn't simply the slaying of a monster. It was a mythic victory of clarity over confusion, of rational thought rising above primal chaos. Yet Python was never entirely vanquished. Even in defeat, its presence endured, a reminder that in every revelation, shadows still stir, and beneath every truth, mystery waits. Beasts of myth. From Greek transformation to Norse reckoning, Apollo sees Delphi as his divine mouthpiece, blending the serpent's ancient insight into his own celestial narrative. The Greeks grasped a profound truth. Mastery over nature didn't require its destruction, but its metamorphosis. The serpent's cleverness was recast as the god's prophetic clarity, its raw essence molded into sacred muse. Greek myth excelled not by stripping creatures of complexity, but by elevating it. The fox, more than a trickster, became a symbol of agility and cunning, much like Hermes cloaked in disguise. Dogs, beyond loyalty, acted as soul shepherds, guiding the dead across the river Styx with Cerberus's threefold vigilance. Even the humble tortoise, scooped out and strung into a lyre, told of artistry born from tenacity. Each animal embodied a paradox. The bull might be a storm of Poseidon's fury in one legend, and a disguise for Zeus's seduction in another, reflecting that nature's force is not moral but malleable, shaped by human intention. Nowhere did this duality emerge more powerfully than in hybrids like the Minotaur, part man, part beast. His labyrinth not just a maze, but a reflection, exposing Athens' insatiable appetite for youth offered in sacrifice. The centaurs, half horse, half human, were the living conflict between reason and instinct. Their drunken rampages at ceremonies served as warnings. Without harmony, even intellect can turn wild and destructive. Were these just symbolic tales? To a farmer who left offerings for Artemis's deer, or a sailor who invoked Poseidon riding dolphins across the surf, the divide between metaphor and reality dissolved. These mythic beasts weren't simply symbols, they were conduits, giving form to what the mind cannot touch. And soon, as the cold winds blow northward, we'll find ourselves in Norse lands, where creatures take on even more fearsome shapes. Wolves devour the sun, serpents encircle the globe, and eight-legged horses thunder between worlds. If the Greeks shaped their mythical beasts with poetic elegance, the Norse carved theirs with brutal resolve. In Asgard's icy halls, beneath the creaking limbs of Yggdrasil, the world tree strained under the weight of 9 realms. Two ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, perched atop Odin's throne of spears, their dark wings glimmering like forged steel. Each morning, they soared through fog and war-torn fields, returning at dusk to murmur truths into the Allfather's ears. To the Vikings, these birds weren't omens. They were the breath of wisdom itself. A raven circling overhead before battle wasn't just a sign of doom. It was Odin's silent judgment, measuring the hearts of warriors. And when the feasting flames dimmed, the finest cuts were left for them, not from fear, but in honor of the mind's engine. For without memory, who are we? And without thought, how do we conquer anything at all? Spirit beasts and soul surgeons. Animal power in shamanic traditions. The predator in shamanic realms is not merely a killer, it's a healer of the spirit. Under the intense influence of ayahuasca, shamans speak of transforming into jaguars, their fingers reshaping into claws as they move through inner landscapes, tracking and removing toxic energies hidden deep within the psyche. This potent vine-based brew doesn't simply generate animal visions, it strips away the surface of reality, unveiling a deeper layer where anacondas chant in melodies of restoration, and hummingbirds delicately sew spiritual wounds with beaks as fine as needles. In the vocabulary of Western neuroscience, this is chemically induced synesthesia. But to the Shipibo people, it's nothing extraordinary. The creature and the cure are one and the same. The vision and the body are not separate. They converge in truth. This fusion of the animal world and the healing journey isn't a relic of the ancient past. In the glowing sprawl of modern Los Angeles, New Age shamans gather not around jungle brews but around cacao ceremonies. And yet, the spirits summoned are curiously familiar. City dwellers recount encounters with soaring eagles lifting their despair, or wolves emerging from the depths to ignite forgotten strength. Skeptics may reduce these visions to brain chemistry, archetypes from Jung's depths, mere neurons sparking symbolic images. But among the shamans of Tuva, such experiences are more than imagination. If a spiritual ally restores your soul, does it matter whether it comes from biology or beyond? Their ancestors beat drums adorned with reindeer and sang to wolves, not because they represented strength, but because they were strength, as real as lungs filling with breath. Perhaps the most grounded wisdom comes from the Sami of the northern tundras. Their shamans once made agreements with the spirits of reindeer to influence the sky itself. Meteorologists may scoff, yet researchers recorded rituals where storms parted around herds marked with sacred signs. Coincidence? The Sami simply smile. When a people live side by side with animals for thousands of years, the line between the everyday and the divine dissolves. A reindeer's sudden sneeze may forecast snow, not through magic, but because its senses detect subtle shifts long before any weather satellite. As our path moves into East Asia, the questions transform. In Tibetan Buddhism, the snow lion represents joy that knows no fear, a visualized guardian of awakened spirit. In Japan, fox spirits known as kitsune stand watch at shrine entrances, their presence both enigmatic and sacred, bridging the visible and the unseen. Sacred creatures, offerings of the Andes, once valued for their dung that enriched the soil, llamas held an even higher role as the supreme sacrificial gift in the Capacocha rites. Immaculate white llamas were guided up to lofty peaks where their throats were cut, releasing their final breaths as vessels for human prayers to ascend to the gods. Today, archaeologists still uncover their frozen, mummified forms at staggering elevations, limbs curled in what appears to be a permanent posture of devotion. Paradoxically, these ritual deaths were not mere killings, but sacred exchanges. The llamas' lives weren't taken, they were offered. This was a divine transaction, a spiritual economy in which life was traded for heavenly blessings. Then there is the guinea pig, known as kui, a modest animal with a profound purpose. Priests interpreted its internal organs as if decoding prophetic scriptures. The shape and position of these tiny parts foretold approaching droughts or conflicts. Families kept them as alert guardians. If a kui let out a shrill cry during the night, it was believed to signal the presence of malevolent spirits. Even in modern times, Andean shamans use guinea pigs in limpia healing ceremonies, gliding their bodies across a patient to draw out sickness, then ceremonially opening them to interpret the affliction. What may appear strange to outsiders was, for the Inca, an act grounded in deep spiritual perception. The Kai's acute sensitivity made it a living conduit between the physical and the metaphysical worlds. When the Spanish conquistadors came bearing swords and crucifixes, they disregarded these sacred customs entirely. Whispers of the wild. Echoes in dream and silence. An octopus shifting its colors might reveal the strength of your emotional adaptability. If you listen closely enough, their quiet messages grow louder. As we approach the conclusion of this exploration, remember, the ancient link between humans and animals was never severed. Whether it's the sharp cry of a raptor or a serpent coiled in dream space, the animal voices persist, not as relics of an extinct world, but as present-day companions. One final chapter lies ahead, where every insight converges into a revelation as eternal as the first barefoot print alongside a wolf's in primal mud. From the earliest smears of pigment beside canine tracks on cave walls to the final monarch crowned with jade serpents, our connection to sacred beasts was never merely ceremonial, it was survival itself. These beings were our bridges to the universe, their behaviors revealing celestial patterns and seasonal cycles long before humans charted the skies or invented timekeepers. A lion's bellow was more than noise, it was sovereignty's heartbeat, resonating from the plains of ancient Mesopotamia to the high grasses of the Masa lands. The delicate weave of a spider's silk was no simple thread, it was the original manuscript of human storytelling. Every myth, every dance, every sacred sculpture echoed one eternal idea. Animals were humanity's earliest mentors. They showed us how to harvest without destruction, how to treat ailments with roots and leaves, how to decipher a storm's arrival from the path of a flock. But beyond practical lessons, these narratives shaped our ethics. The Cherokee story of the bear who lost his tail due to greed taught justice. The Norse saga of Fenrir, the wolf trapped by divine chains, was a caution against reckless ambition. Even the humble dung beetle, pushing its sphere of decay, mirrored the Egyptian faith in regeneration and endurance, turning death into life. These tales weren't mere folklore, they were deeply encoded moral systems written in fur, scale, and feather. When a Zuni elder called upon the bravery of the Badger clan, or when a samurai adorned his battle flag with soaring cranes, they weren't just borrowing metaphors, they were aligning with elemental powers beyond themselves. Today, as ice sheets recede and rainforests disappear, those ancient conversations feel more vital than ever. Indigenous guardians fighting to preserve salmon streams and wolf dens aren't only saving biodiversity, they're protecting living encyclopedias of planetary knowledge. Contemporary science is now affirming what shamans and totemic lore long proclaimed. Beavers sculpt entire wetland ecosystems that resist drought, whale songs help cycle nutrients through the ocean's depths, and even the food stashing habits of ravens plant new forests. The Hopi prophecy resounds with a warning more urgent than ever. When the animals vanish, the wisdom vanishes with them. Divine beasts. When animals were sacred law, in ancient Egypt, the act of killing a cat wasn't merely illegal, it was a profound violation of the sacred, an offense so grave it warranted execution. These graceful predators weren't just pets. They embodied the vigilant spirit of the goddess Bastet, her gaze made flesh. Far to the frigid north, Norse mystics draped themselves in bare hides, not just as protection against the cold, but as a means to absorb the creature's raw, relentless power during spiritual rituals. These garments became more than clothing. They were channels for transformation. Art, too, became a sacred bridge between species and gods. In Mesoamerican murals, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, slithered across temple walls as both symbol and spirit. Along the Nile, lion-headed statues of Sekhmet stood sentinel, not merely as decorative sculptures, but as guardians of the sacred threshold. Across cultures, artists didn't just portray animals, they sculpted gateways to the divine. What astonishes even now isn't only the reverence they held, but how deeply that reverence shaped their world. Beasts of the divine. Animal forms in Egyptian belief. Anubis wasn't simply designed to resemble a jackal haunting the desert. His pointed snout and acute senses captured the very spirit of passage, guiding souls across the uncertain veil where human courage often failed. And Horus, with the unblinking gaze of a falcon, didn't merely don wings. He was the sky incarnate, his vision cutting through falsehood like a hawk descending on prey. These animal forms were no random associations. Each curve of a jaw, each swish of a tail, conveyed encoded messages. For the ancient Egyptians, animals were more than sacred. They were keys to unlocking the structure of reality itself. Take Thoth, the divine scribe with the head of an ibis. Though a bird wading through shallows, to Nile dwellers, the ibis became a living pen, its long, curved beak dipping into murky waters to draw out truths, just as Thoth unraveled the mysteries of the cosmos. Even the humble scarab beetle, rolling a ball of earth across hot sands, was not overlooked. It symbolized Khepri, the deity who nudged the sun over the horizon each morning. To the Egyptians, this wasn't mere mythology. It was a sacred cosmology woven into the very behavior of animals. This was a theology not based in abstraction, but grounded in the observable instincts of the natural world. The divine didn't speak only through scripture. It crawled, flew, and stalked across the desert in familiar forms. And so a question remains. Did the Egyptians project holiness onto animals, or did they simply recognize the sacred already living within them? Echoes of the wild. Animal spirits across time and tradition, with every twitch of a tiger's tail and every silent step of a chilan, the earth murmurs its ancient truths, if only we're attuned to hear them. Beneath the glowing red lanterns of a Shinto shrine, a flicker of pale fur darts between vermilion torii gates, neither entirely fox nor fully human, but something enchanted, suspended between both realms. These are the kitsune, the enigmatic fox spirits of Japanese folklore, embodiments of delightful contradiction. To some, they are the sacred emissaries of Inari, the god of rice and prosperity. Statues in their honor wear red bibs like miniature clergy. Their bushy tails, sometimes just one, sometimes 9, unfurl like living scrolls, each marking another 100 years of earned wisdom. But should you deceive or insult them, those same tales might conjure mirages to disgrace you. A feast crumbling into rot, a lover's smile dissolving into a snout. This dual nature is no accident. In Japan, where Shinto's reverence for nature merges with Buddhism's spiritual causality, the kitsune became holy riddles. Tricksters teaching ethics, wild spirits safeguarding harvests, mystical allies who could bless a merchant's fortune or curse a liar with equal skill. Then, cloaked in mist among cedar forests, dwell the tengu, creatures with crimson faces, long noses, and soot-dark wings. Once feared as omens of violence, these crow-like figures evolved. Over time, they transformed from arrogant demons into keepers of secret wisdom. Hermits and warrior monks sought them for teachings in martial discipline. Legends even speak of Tengu saving lost children, so long as they showed humility and respect. Like the kitsune, Tengu bridged worlds. Terrifying and revered, wild and wise, symbols of discipline tangled with untamed spirit. Why the fox? Why does it shape paths so persistently through the mythic landscapes of Asia? The answer may lie in the fields themselves. Foxes raided chicken coops, but also kept rice fields safe from rats. Their eerie cries at twilight were said to mimic mourning women. Sharp, cunning, and unpredictable, they unsettled and intrigued. Farmers made offerings to avoid their wrath. Poets praised their spectral grace. When Buddhism took root in Japan, the fox didn't disappear, it adapted. Some tales recount kitsune attaining enlightenment, their so-called tricks revealed to be compassionate illusions, guiding humans to deeper truths. Yet Japanese animal folklore doesn't merely educate, it also delivers justice. Consider the tale of the monkey and the crab. After a violent betrayal, the crab's surviving kin rally to avenge its death, not through brute strength, but unity and wit. It's more than a children's fable. It's a story of cosmic balance, where even the smallest creature can tip the scales of justice. This belief that animals are arbiters of morality threads its way across cultures. From Kyoto's tea gardens to the wide savannas of Africa, the story continues. There, the jackal laughs with secrets older than words. The spider spins wisdom from thread, and the lion's thunderous voice shakes the stars beneath the twisted limbs of the baobab tree, where the next chapter awaits. Voices of the Wild. Stories woven in silk and scale. As firelight flickers across attentive faces, a soft hush travels through the gathering. The spider has begun his tale again. But this is no ordinary weaver of webs. Anansi, the legendary arachnid of the Akan people, spins stories themselves. More than a trickster, he is the first storyteller, the sacred jester who revealed that truth often wears a smile. To the people of Ghana, Anansi is not simply a folk hero, he's the original architect of myth. Picture him hanging by a silken thread, cleverly convincing the sky god Niam to release all stories to humankind below, or laugh as he stumbles, dropping a vessel filled with all wisdom into the sea, knowledge scattering like glistening shells, waiting for anyone to discover. His 8 legs don't just climb and scurry, they bind generations together, proving that even a tiny creature can outwit divine power and shape the human world. Now turn your gaze southward, where among the rivers and forests of Zululand, a different figure coils into view. The python, long, muscular, and magnificent, is no symbol of fear here. Instead, it's a revered spirit of fertility and storm. With glistening scales reflecting the sunlight like rippling water, the great serpent is said to carry the rains within its body. When the soil cracks from drought, elders pour milk into the earth as an offering, whispering their hopes to the python in exchange for rain. It doesn't just glide through grass, it calls rivers into being. Its very existence forms a bridge between heaven and soil, a sacred conduit for life itself. Meanwhile, across the golden plains of Mali and Ethiopia, another creature walks with royal purpose, the lion. Its roar isn't just a warning, it's a proclamation of sovereignty. Sundiata Keita, legendary founder of the Mali Empire, was said to embody the lion's might, his courage and justice a mirror of the great beast's dignified strength. In Ethiopia, the Lion of Judah remains emblazoned on shields and royal crests, a living symbol of dynastic heritage said to stretch all the way back to King Solomon. Unlike the snarling lions of European heraldry, African lions are often shown seated in silent command, more guardians than conquerors. Their manes are like golden crowns, spun from the savannah itself. Yet the deepest wonder may lie in the cosmos, where the Dogon people of Mali trace their origins to a celestial being known as Namo, a divine serpent not of earth, but of the stars. Namo is no simple myth. It is the primordial architect, the cosmic voice that shaped order from chaos. Its coiled form spirals through the heavens, a sacred symbol of creation and celestial rhythm. Here, in silk and scale, claw and roar, animals are far more than metaphors. They are storytellers, teachers, rainmakers, and kings, living emblems of sacred knowledge. In African traditions, they don't just inhabit the world, they explain it. Sacred shadows. Animal reverence in the age of empire. What colonizers once dismissed as heathen folklore was, in truth, a profound system of spiritual knowledge. Spanish conquistadors recorded stories of condor worship only to ridicule them, branding such beliefs as demonic. The sacred rites involving the kai, those sensitive guinea pigs used for divination, were mocked as superstition. But beneath the surface of forced conversions and burning crosses, the old ways never truly vanished. Catholic cathedrals rose atop ancient stones shaped like pumas. In the heart of Spanish churches, local stonemasons embedded the sacred geometry of their animal totems. Indigenous artisans wove serpents into the borders of Christian tapestries, not in open defiance, but as quiet acts of cultural survival. The condor, once honored as a sky messenger, was reborn in the age of resistance. Its wings now stretched across revolutionary flags, a silent vow of freedom from imperial rule. What is remarkable is not just the survival of these beliefs, but how their rhythms echo far beyond the Andes. The Inca's condor, soaring between earth and heaven, calls to mind the ravens that perched on Odin's shoulders in Norse legend. The Inca trinity, condor, puma, and serpent, mirrors the sacred threes of other civilizations. The Hindu Trimurti, the Christian Holy Trinity. Even the Kai's role as a living oracle finds reflection in other cultures' animal diviners and augurs. Through colonization, these belief systems were never fully extinguished. They were braided into new symbols, whispered into new prayers, and hidden in plain sight. The worship of animals did not die. It adapted, waiting patiently in shadows to speak again. Totems reimagined. Animal spirit in a digital age. We haven't banished the enchantment of animals. We've made it accessible to all. A child enchanted by a wisecracking raccoon on screen might grow up to champion the protection of wild habitats. What seems like entertainment today could awaken a lifetime of stewardship. Eco-spiritual movements like rewilding or bird communication workshops aren't nostalgic trends. They're subconscious echoes of ancient relationships between human and beast, now dressed in the vocabulary of science, but still animated by wonder. Look closely at the ink etched on someone's arm. A koi leaping upstream, a lone wolf silhouetted against a moon it can never reach. These are the clan emblems of our time, personal animal guides marked in pigment instead of carved wood. Across the Pacific Northwest, indigenous artisans continue to raise totem poles, not as museum artifacts, but as living stories. Their cedar sculptures whisper tales where whales bear the weight of ancestry and clever ravens steal the light. These are not extinct beliefs. They are mythologies in motion. Even in conservation, the ancient duty of guardianship endures. When ecologists fight to preserve the final Javan rhinos or release wolves back into Yellowstone's wilderness, they're not just defending ecosystems, they're honoring an unspoken pact that predates the scientific method. The Lakota did not revere the buffalo merely for sustenance. They saw a sacred exchange. Today's language may invoke keystone species or ecological balance, but the heart of it remains unchanged. Certain beings anchor the structure of existence itself. So, do animal archetypes still matter? Modern research suggests yes. Neurological studies reveal we recognize animal imagery faster than abstract patterns. Our brains instinctively respond to the silhouette of a stag as if recalling a language older than speech. That's perhaps why rockets are christened after mythical falcons or why corporate leaders cling to the metaphor of the alpha wolf. These symbols endure not for nostalgia, but because they resonate with something embedded deep within our cognitive architecture. Science, once thought to dispel myth, is now revealing its truths in new light. Ethologists have discovered dolphins who use individual names, elephants who grieve, and crows who shape tools, behaviors once reserved for humans. Suddenly, those ancient fables of speaking animals seem less like fantasy and more like insight. Take the wolf's song. When a pack howls, it doesn't produce a flat chant. Each member adjusts its tone to avoid duplicating another's pitch, creating a harmonic fingerprint unique to their group. It's not just noise, it's a vocal display of unity, a woven pattern of voices affirming identity and connection. No wonder civilizations from ancient Rome to the Great Plains held wolves as emblems of fidelity and unity. Modern science now affirms what storytelling long conveyed. These creatures exemplify the social virtues humans revere: cooperation, communication, and kinship. Why do animals move us so deeply? Enter biophilia, the theory that humans have an intrinsic emotional bond with the living world. Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson proposed that our brains evolved in nature's lap, attuned to the shimmer of feathers or the stealth of a predator. MRI scans confirm it. Images of animals like tigers or eagles light up brain regions activated by great art or music. This is no passing admiration. It's a primal conversation, a memory older than words. When the Navajos speak of wolves as teachers, or when Norse legends revere Odin's twin ravens, they're not dressing animals in human traits. They're recognizing a kinship that predates civilization. Predators, in particular, are etched into our minds. Evolutionary psychology suggests that our sensitivity to bared fangs and slit pupils stems from a time when we walked the line between hunter and prey. Even in today's modern comfort, the amygdala, our brain's ancient alarm, still reacts fiercely to the sight of a coiled snake or stalking panther. We have not outgrown our connection to animals. We've simply begun to understand it from a different vantage point, through neuroscience, ecology, and genetics. Yet, what they affirm is something timeless. The sacred animal has never left us. Its voice has simply found new forms: ink on skin, icons in data, whispers in the wilderness. And we are still listening. Mythology and science convergence. Across the continents, from Africa to the Arctic, humanity has always sought meaning in the creatures that move among us: hoofed, winged, scaled, or clawed. In West African traditions, seers once read the secrets of fate in goat entrails. What seems primitive to modern eyes may hint at something deeper: a universal instinct to seek the divine in the natural world. Now, as the Andes fade into mist and shadow, another call echoes from the icy north, where reindeer ferry shamans between the seen and unseen, and wolves raise their haunting choruses to the moon. The animals are still speaking, and their language predates nations, outlives empires, and echoes from a time before time. From the Siberian tundras to the stone temples of Mesoamerica, a single thread winds through humanity's myths: the serpent. Coiled in contradiction, this creature slithers through every mythology with uncanny consistency. In Norse sagas, Jormungandr encircles the earth, tail and mouth, the embodiment of destruction and rebirth. In Hindu cosmology, Kundalini rests curled at the spine, a dormant force awaiting spiritual ignition, rising in fiery spirals. Among Australia's Aboriginal peoples, the rainbow serpent carves the land into being, its undulations shaping rivers and valleys. Why does this limbless creature haunt our dreams across cultures and millennia? Because it is the ultimate shapeshifter, shedding skin like the cosmos sheds time. At once deadly and healing, sacred and profane, grounded yet ascending, the snake resists all binaries. Its biology becomes metaphor. It is paradox, coiled. In contrast, the eagle carves a cleaner path through myth. Where serpents coil, eagles soar. The Romans placed Jupiter's thunder in its talons. To the indigenous nations of North America, it became a sacred envoy, lifting prayers skyward. In ancient Persia, the simurgh nested in the tree of knowledge, feathers dripping with the essence of eternity. Birds, light-boned and sky-hungry, became natural metaphors for the soul's liberation. In Egypt, the Ba, a human-headed falcon, drifted between tombs and the afterlife. In Celtic lore, The birds of Rhiannon sang songs so haunting they could wake the dead or lull the living into endless sleep. Winged beings weren't just wildlife. They were spiritual messengers, boundary crossers, metaphors for transcendence. They flew where we could not, until myth gave us wings. Predators, too, stalk our dreams. The lion, majestic and brutal, graced Mesopotamian stelae and medieval coats of arms, its mane a crown of fire. It symbolized not just strength but kingship, an ungovernable force pressed into the service of rule. Wolves occupy a stranger realm. In Norse legend, Fenrir is a beast of apocalypse, destined to consume gods. Yet Rome owes its very origin to a she-wolf's milk, nourishing Romulus and Remus. The wolf is liminal, guardian and destroyer, menace and matron. Our myths project onto it all the ambiguity we feel toward the wild, a force we fear, revere, and ultimately mourn as it vanishes from the land. Prey animals carry subtler truths. The deer, with eyes like mirrors of mercy, enters Christian lore as a symbol of devotion. Saint Hubert's vision of a crucifix-bearing stag became a divine call to humility. In Japan's Nara, deer wander temples like monks in fur, their calm presence a benediction. Rabbits, too, whether as the moon-bound deities of Aztec legend or Burr rabbit in African-American folklore, embody cleverness and fertility, champions of survival through wit rather than war. Vulnerability in these myths is not weakness, it's another kind of strength. A rabbit's speed, a deer's alertness, a bird's flight, each a sacred adaptation, honored in stories as much as strength ever was. Color infuses these symbols with deeper meaning. White animals, the pale buffalo of the Lakota, the celestial steeds of Hindu deities, signal purity and divine intention. Black creatures, the jaguar stalking the Mayan underworld, the raven perched on a Norse god's shoulder, often herald death or transformation. But these meanings are not universal. In China, the black tortoise guards the northern sky, its darkness a sign of protection. Red animals blaze with renewal. Phoenix rising, cardinals flaring in sacred groves, scarlet ibises striding through myth as vessels of sacrifice and rebirth. Where do these patterns come from? Carl Jung would suggest they arise from the collective unconscious, a reservoir of archetypes etched into the architecture of the human mind. Across space and time, we have returned to the same animals to tell the same stories in different tongues. These creatures are not just characters, they are symbolic blueprints shaped by evolution, memory, and dream. Relearning the language of animals, humans may not perish from war or famine, but from loneliness, cut off from the living world we once understood instinctively. So how do we begin again? We start by relearning the language. Follow the red-tailed hawk's migration, not just as coordinates on a map, but as a celestial compass etched across the sky. See the urban fox, not as a nuisance, but as a flicker of wild resilience weaving through concrete and steel. Support conservation that honors ancestral wisdom, whether it's whale sanctuaries in Maui guided by native voices or the return of buffalo to Lakota lands. These aren't just projects, they're reconnections, restorations of a broken covenant. And next time you see a crow tilt its head and study you, remember, that's not just a bird. That's a god's envoy. Odin's eyes, the Morrigan's shadow, a trickster, a prophet, a survivor, a creature that has watched empires rise and fall and still perches, waiting. The wolves are still howling, the ravens still watching. The question is, will we listen before the myths become memorials? Drop your favorite animal myth in the comments. Was it the cunning kitsune? The owl of Athena? Or maybe a personal encounter that felt like a totem's nod, a message meant only for you? And if you've ever felt that strange, sacred flicker when an animal crossed your path, subscribe. Because history's mysteries aren't just buried in ruins. They're breathing beside us, waiting to be remembered.